Two people, same job title, same city, same salary, same Tuesday. Person A wakes up at 6:47 and checks their bank account before they check anything else. The balance is $214. Rent is due in 4 days. It is $1,340. There is a $35 overdraft fee from last Thursday that they already knew about but hoped wouldn't be there. It is still there. They drive to work because the transmission makes a noise they cannot afford to diagnose. They eat lunch at their desk, not because they're busy, because the $14 salad place downstairs has become a number they can feel. In the meeting at 2 p.m., their manager mentions a professional development conference in April. $600 registration. They write it down. They will not go. On the way home, they get a call from a number they don't recognize and let it go to voicemail. They'll already know what it is. Person B wakes up at 7:15. No alarm. The mortgage payment left automatically last week. They get coffee from the machine they bought when they stopped thinking about whether they could afford a coffee machine. They drive to work. The car is 4 years old and fully paid off. In the meeting at 2 p.m., they hear about the April conference and send a Slack message asking how to expense it before the meeting ends. On the way home, they take a phone call without checking the number first. Same salary, different lives. The difference is net worth, and what this video is about is exactly that gap, not how to invest, not which index fund, not a 12-step plan. This is a tour, a specific, uncomfortable, vivid tour of what life actually feels like at every level of the net worth ladder, from negative numbers all the way up to $100 million. Here's the first thing you need to understand before we go anywhere. The ladder is not linear. The early rungs change your life faster and more completely than any rung above them. Going from negative 10,000 to zero does more for your daily existence than going from 2 million to 3 million. The first dollars you accumulate do not buy luxury. They buy the removal of pain. They buy the end of the overdraft check, the end of the call you let go to voicemail, the end of making every decision through the lens of what you cannot afford to get wrong. There is an invisible tax on being broke, and it is enormous. It shows up as late fees and high interest debt and the premium you pay for car insurance when your credit score is 580. It shows up as time. The hours spent on hold, disputing a charge, taking 2 buses instead of 1, working a second job on a Saturday morning you will never get back. It shows up in your decisions. When you are financially stressed, your cognitive bandwidth shrinks. Studies have measured it. The mental load of scarcity consumes the same processing power as losing a night of sleep every single day. And it shows up in your relationships, in the tension that money trouble puts in a household, in the plans you decline, in the version of yourself other people get when you are perpetually underwater. But here is a trade-off theme that runs through every level above zero. Each rung of this ladder does not just add options, it adds new constraints, new attention required, new exposure, new categories of anxiety that did not exist before. The person with 8 figures has problems, the person with 4 figures has never imagined, and some of them are genuinely worse. We are going to look at every tier through the same lens. Housing, work, how you get around, how your friendships change and which ones don't survive, what dating looks like, what family dynamics start to mean, how taxes begin to matter and then dominate, where risk lives at each level, what status costs you, what freedom actually feels like once you can afford it, and what you do with the anxiety that never fully leaves regardless of the number. The uncomfortable question underneath all of it is this: are you building toward comfort or control or admiration or escape? Because the answer changes what the money does to you. Let's start at the bottom. Negative net worth. You owe more than you own. This is not a metaphor. This is a balance sheet with a minus sign at the top and no column that fixes it today. The phone call you let go to voicemail is a collections account. $340 from a medical bill you disputed and lost, or thought you could wait out, or simply could not pay when it arrived and then could not pay by the time the letter stopped being polite. Your credit score is 581. You know this number the way you know your own birthday. You did not choose to memorize it. It memorized itself through consequences. Housing is wherever the math allows. A roommate situation where 2 people share 1 bathroom and an unspoken agreement not to discuss each other's finances too directly. Or a spare room at a parent's house where the arrangement started as temporary and has not been temporary for 11 months. You are grateful. You are also aware of what gratitude costs when it comes with a curfew or a question about the job search every Sunday evening. The car runs. Mostly. There is a noise you have researched extensively on YouTube and still cannot afford to address. You take surface streets when possible because the highway fee comes out Thursday and Thursday is close. You calculate gas in gallons, not dollars, and you calculate it accurately. At work, you do not quit anything. You do not negotiate. The job pays $42,000 and the job continues to pay $42,000 because the alternative is a gap in income you cannot survive and a reference you cannot risk. Your manager knows this and may not know they know this. It shapes every interaction in a direction you feel, but cannot name in a meeting. The conference in April is not a real consideration. You write it down anyway because writing it down costs nothing. Friendships contract, not all at once. Gradually. The group chat suggests a birthday dinner at a restaurant where the entrees are $28. You say you might be late. You do not go. The dynamic shifts in ways no one acknowledges directly. You are present at the cheaper things and absent from the others, and after a while, the invitations begin to reflect the pattern. Dating carries a specific kind of weight. The first few dates are manageable. By the fourth or fifth, there is an arithmetic problem you are solving in your head while pretending to read a menu. Anything serious surfaces the math, where you live, what you owe, the future you can or cannot credibly describe. You are one surprise away from collapse, and the person across the table does not know that, and you are deciding every time whether tonight is the night you explain it. Taxes at this tier are simple because the number is small. You may get a refund. You spend it on the thing that was already broken. Now move the number to $10,000, positive 10,000. The buffer exists. This is not nothing. This is not even close to nothing. For the first time in possibly years, a single unexpected event does not automatically become a crisis. The car noise gets diagnosed, the bill gets paid, the late fees stop compounding because there is enough in the account to keep it above zero through the end of the month. Most months. Work feels slightly different. Not transformed, slightly. You have approximately 6 to 8 weeks of living expenses behind you. That is not enough to quit. It is enough to push back. Once on the thing you would have previously absorbed in silence. You do not confuse this with security. You remember what the account looked like at $214. You check it less often than you used to. You still check it. The fragility is real. One medical event, one transmission failure, 1 month where the hours get cut. The buffer goes back to zero and you remember exactly what zero felt like because zero was recent. The anxiety at $10,000 is not survival anxiety. It is the anxiety of someone watching a glass on the edge of a table. Everything is fine. Do not bump the table. $100,000 is where something structural shifts. Not comfort, exactly. Stability. There is a difference. You can rent the apartment without calculating whether you will make it to the second month. You can absorb the car repair without opening a new credit card. You can sit across from a bad boss and the chair does not feel quite as fixed in place as it used to. You do not quit impulsively, but the option has become real enough that it changes how you sit in the room. Housing at $100,000 means you have choices. You can put a deposit down without draining to zero. You can furnish the place without financing a couch. You can stay somewhere because you want to, not only because moving costs money you do not have. Dating and family conversations become cleaner, not easy. Cleaner. You can say where you are financially without it being a confession. Serious relationships involve actual conversations about the future, and you can participate in those conversations as someone with numbers that make sense. Friends are a more complicated story. The $100,000 version of you starts to drift from the version who needed to miss the birthday dinner. Some of those friendships hold. Some of them were always about proximity and shared constraint, and when the constraint changes, the proximity thins. This is a loss that does not announce itself. You notice it one day when you realize you have not talked to someone you used to talk to constantly, and the reason is not a fight. The reason is that your Tuesdays now look different, and different, quietly, became distant. Taxes begin to matter, not dominate, begin to matter. You might have a financial account worth organizing. You might have choices about how you contribute to retirement. The government has opinions about your money now, gentle ones, but you feel them for the first time. The risk at $100,000 is no longer, can I make rent? The risk has migrated upward. The new question is whether you are using this correctly, whether the choices you are making are the right ones, whether the people around you can tell the difference. The anxiety does not leave. It changes addresses. $500,000, you feel it before you can explain it. The neighborhood is different, or it is the same neighborhood and the apartment is bigger, or you are doing the math on ownership and the math is beginning to work. You have options you can name specifically, not theoretically. You could put 20% down on something real. You could not do that at $100,000. The question is whether you do it, and the question is now genuinely yours to answer rather than answered for you by the balance. Work has leverage now, not retirement level leverage, career leverage, The kind that lets you take the risk with the new role, negotiate without performing confidence you don't have, or leave a situation that is costing you more than the salary is worth. You have probably changed jobs at least once because you could. The move paid off or it didn't, and either way you made it voluntarily, and voluntary matters more than the outcome. The car is paid off and reliable. You bought it that way because the mental calculus around car payments finally resolved itself in your favor. You do not think about the car very much. This is underrated as a life improvement. Family finds out. Not necessarily the number. They find out something changed. It shows in how you handle a crisis that would have previously cascaded. It shows when a family member asks for help and you do not immediately have to calculate whether helping them breaks you. The guilt that follows the ability to help is real and largely undiscussed. So are the expectations that arrive with it quietly and then not so quietly. Friends notice the drift continuing. Your peer group reorganizes over time around shared financial reality. This is not a choice you make consciously. It is a consequence you observe. Some of the older friendships survive it. The ones that do are the ones worth naming. Taxes are now a topic. You have an accountant, or you should. The number of decisions that carry tax implications has grown past the point where guessing is acceptable. You pay more. You wonder if you are paying correctly. Both concerns are legitimate. You hide the money sometimes, not illegally, socially. You describe vacations with price ranges removed. You do not mention the account balance at dinner. You learn to translate your life into a version that does not create friction with people who are still at $40,000 and $100,000 because you remember exactly what it felt like to be at those numbers, and you do not want to become the person who forgets. $1 million, financially okay, not rich. This is important. Financially okay is not rich. $1 million invested at a conservative withdrawal rate supports roughly $40,000 per year. That is a livable income. It is not a number that ends the calculation entirely. The calculation continues, but the nature of it has changed. Housing is now an identity decision as much as a financial one. The neighborhood you choose signals something. The size of the house says something. You are aware of this in a way you were not at earlier tiers because earlier tiers had fewer options, and fewer options mean fewer statements. Work is theoretically optional. In practice, it is sticky. The income still matters. The structure matters. The colleagues matter. The version of yourself that exists inside a professional context matters more than you expected it to. You keep going. You tell yourself you could stop. Probably both things are true. Status gets louder here. The signals around you intensify. The right car, the right neighborhood, the right school for the kids, the right watch, the right firm. You can afford some of these now. Which ones you choose tells you something about what the money has been doing to you since you started accumulating it. Risk tolerance rises. Sometimes appropriately, sometimes not. You have enough cushion that a bad investment does not end you, and that cushion can make bad investments feel less bad than they are in the moment before they resolve. This is a blind spot specific to this tier. Survivable loss is still loss. The fear of falling back down is specific and persistent. You have been multiple versions of yourself along this climb. The version with $214 in the account. The version watching the $10,000 buffer like a glass on a table edge. You do not fully trust that version is gone. You check the account. Less often than before, but you check it. Across every tier from negative to $1 million, 3 things change silently and continuously. What credit costs you, what taxes take from you, and what access to decent rates on everything from car loans to mortgages to business lines of credit does for or against you. At the bottom, the system charges you more for being at the bottom. At the top, the system extends discounts for being at the top. The distance between those two experiences is never fully visible in a single month. Across a decade, it is enormous. The shape of risk changes with every rung. At negative net worth, risk is tonight. At $10,000, risk is next month. At $100,000, risk is this year. At $500,000, risk is this decade. At $1 million, risk is, am I doing something meaningful, or am I optimizing a number that stopped solving my actual problems 3 tiers ago? That question arrives on a Tuesday, usually. It does not have an account balance. It does not appear on any statement. But it is the question the money has been building towards since the first time you let a call go to voicemail because you already knew what it was. $5 million. The word rich starts to feel imprecise. What you have is flexibility. And flexibility at this level is a different substance than the word suggests. Work becomes selection. You are not choosing between jobs. You are choosing whether the thing in front of you is worth your calendar. The answer is sometimes no, and no is now a complete sentence with no financial consequence attached to it. Housing becomes curated. The neighborhood is deliberate. The square footage is decided by preference, not by what the approval letter allowed. The car is whatever you actually wanted, and you bought it without a single calculation about what it signals. Except you did calculate what it signals. You just did it consciously. Your friend network has split. There is a before group and an after group, and the seam between them is visible if you look directly at it, which you try not to. Taxes are now a calendar item, an entity, an advisor named someone whose last name you had to look up before the first meeting. The structure of your money has become a project that requires management, and management requires time, and time is the thing you came here to protect. $10 million, you are no longer anonymous unless you pay to be. Privacy is a service you purchase the way you used to purchase groceries. People research you before the meeting. Dates are aware of the number before you say anything. Family requests arrive with more formal language, a proposal, a deck, a number that ends in a comma. Lawsuits become a realistic category of risk. Concentration in the wrong asset becomes something your advisors mention repeatedly. Your reputation is now an asset on an unwritten balance sheet, and damage to it has a dollar value someone could actually calculate. 25 million. Your life has staff, not as a luxury signal, as an operational requirement. Multiple properties means multiple maintenance cycles, multiple insurance policies, multiple property managers whose job is to stand between you and the friction of ownership at scale. Travel loses most of its friction and gains a logistics coordinator. Time is the genuinely scarce resource now, which means the anxiety has migrated entirely. You are no longer afraid of losing everything. You are afraid of losing what you built to something you failed to protect. 50 million. People stop telling you when you are wrong. This is the specific and underrated danger of this tier. The rooms you enter are rooms where your presence changes what people say, and what people say is no longer calibrated to accuracy. It is calibrated to your comfort. You have access to deals that do not circulate publicly. You have influence in rooms where influence is the only currency that matters. Security planning becomes a topic with its own line item. Tax strategy involves structures with names that require explanation, even to people who work in tax. The temptation to outsource your entire life is real and not entirely resistible. Someone else manages the properties. Someone else manages the investments. Someone else manages the calendar. You can, if you are not careful, become a passenger in the machinery you built. 100 million. You live inside systems. Wealth management is not a meeting you attend. It is a function that runs continuously, staffed by people whose entire job is to maintain and grow what exists. Generational planning is not a future consideration. It is a present responsibility. Philanthropy is expected by some, optional by you, but the pressure arrives anyway, from the outside and sometimes from yourself. Public perception is a managed asset. The paradox is exact. This is the tier of maximum freedom and maximum responsibility, and those two things do not resolve. They coexist in every decision. Here is what does not scale with any of it. Trust, meaning, your actual health. The relationships where someone tells you the true thing, even when the true thing is uncomfortable. The higher you climb, the fewer consequences reach you, and consequences are how most people learn to see clearly. When consequences stop arriving, blind spots grow in the space they left behind. This is not a warning about money. It is a description of what money does to the feedback loops that kept you honest at earlier tiers. So here is the only question that matters now. Which tier are you actually building toward? Not aspirationally, specifically. Name the number. Then name what you're trading for it. Time with the people who knew you before. A location. A version of yourself who was easier to be. The values that are still cheap because they have not been tested yet. Comment the tier you are genuinely targeting. And comment the sacrifice you are not willing to make to get there. That constraint is not a weakness. It is probably the most important financial document you will ever write.